Welcome, everybody. This is General Microsoft 365 Development Special Interest Group, and this is the bi-weekly sync. It is April 2nd, 2020. And in this course, this used to be the General SharePoint Dev, but since we are more and more actually covering stuff across the Microsoft 365 or in other areas like the OneDrive and Teams, there's no point actually calling this course as a SharePoint course because it's not just about SharePoint. So that's why it's kind of getting now rebranded to be more generic from that perspective. Now, what we're going to do today is a few generic slides from Microsoft side. So I'm going to actually talk about the first 5 minutes or 10 minutes, and then we'll go through again PnP CSOM core, PnP PowerShell modernization tooling, what's happening in them. There's actually some really nice development there or hints where we're heading. And then latest on Yo Teams. So Yo Teams is going to have its own recurrent place in this course. So Wictor is going to do a quick update on bi-weekly when possible. And if he can't actually make the call, then somebody else is doing that slide as well. Then we have cool demos coming up. So Chris Kent has prepared us something which I do not know again what it is. So hopefully he remembers that this is a family show and it keeps the things in an understandable format. Just well, people who know who's Chris Kent and his demos, they know that joke as well. If you don't know, you'll see. And then as a final topic, Wictor Wilén is going to talk about how to implement a single sign-on Microsoft Teams tabs using Yo Teams. So quite nice call, different areas of Microsoft 365 being covered, also including non-development stuff. So this is really, really cool from that perspective. Opportunities to participate in the community. If you're interested, just let us know. We want community to have a position or a spot in this course, so you can actually schedule a demo spot, 10 to 15 minute spot in this course and demonstrate some of your, let's say, solutions and structures or configurations. They don't have to be open source, but at the same time, we don't want to transform this course to be a product selling course. So it's not about demonstrating your product. But if you build something for somebody, like I think last week we had a really cool case from Three Will is the company. They had built something really cool for their customer, and they were unable to actually share it as an open source, at least yet. But they demonstrated the code and the solution. And those are really, really powerful because then we can understand what's possible within this platform, not just about the dev stuff, but also from a functionality perspective. And the second thing is you can contribute in GitHub. We'll come back on that one a few times and during this call. If you're intimidated by the GitHub, we'll help you there. We have initiatives helping on that one as well. So you can learn and use the channels what we have to learn how would I contribute in GitHub? What does it mean? What is GitHub? Oh my God. No, it's all good. We'll help you there. And then the most important thing always, please provide feedback. Provide feedback. We are, as a Microsoft, we exist to serve our customers and partners and the ecosystem. You are our customer. We want to make sure that whatever we are implementing is matching what you would like to use. If there's something which you don't like, or something if you like as well, please give us feedback so we know the areas where we should concentrate. And also in the open source side of the house, please give us feedback on things which we should be adjusting, but also please give us feedback on the positive feedback on the people who are working and using their own time to help you to learn something else or something new. Now, updated assets slide. These are getting super busy or busier and busier all the time. But AKMS M365 PnP videos, by the way, all of the old URLs are still working on those. So they're just being updated and rooted in the right ways. We have GitHub in the open source. We have SharePoint framework, which can be used for extend Microsoft Teams as well. There's plenty of samples. Those sample galleries are really cool. And we're looking at potentially to have a centralized sample gallery with pictures and filtering and all of that pretty soon available as well. Well, not pretty soon, but we're working on it. And obviously, there's the issue list. If you're running into any issues, well, in general, in SharePoint development, please let us know. We are able to hopefully help you with that. Now, coming back on the GitHub topic quickly, if you are feeling intimidated on what is a GitHub? I don't know how to get started. I don't know how to edit the stuff and all of that stuff. We do have AKMS Sharing is Caring initiative, which is basically run by David Warner and Hugo Bernier, and they help you to learn how to contribute. So it is really targeted from the basics. How do I register myself as a GitHub user, and how do I do my first pull request? And what does it mean? What does pull request mean? And it's completely understandable that if you haven't been in the open source world, you're not aware what is a GitHub and what does this all means. But if you're interested in helping us, join these sessions, and they are really good sessions to help you to learn what is a GitHub, how does it work, how would you contribute, and how would you consume the existing examples as well. The other thing what I wanted to call out, just a reminder, the latest PnP Weekly went live, today's Thursday, on Tuesday, so day before yesterday, and that was with Wictor. We talked a lot about the Microsoft 365 platform opportunities from a Microsoft Teams perspective. What does it mean for a, let's say, an older SharePoint person which is moving from SharePoint to this new world, and what are the opportunities for the partners, and so ISVs and system integrators around the ecosystem. So really cool setup. You can find this one from our YouTube channel or as a podcast at pnpweekly.podbean.com is the address over there. Now, if you write something which we should call out in the PnP Weekly, please use the hashtag PnP Weekly so we will know about it. One of the key problems what we keep on having is that people write awesome stuff to their blog or their Medium or whatever the platform what they're using, but other people can't find that. And we're trying to help with that with the PnP Weekly. We call out these articles, we call out the people, and we promote their basically deliverables or their writings and articles in these calls, in this podcast, and in this video blog as well. So please use the hashtag PnP Weekly with your links so we know what you have done. So thank you for that one, advance. Now, this is really cool as well. It's not precisely related on Microsoft, so Microsoft doesn't run this business, but it's related on the community side of the house. So Parker's Place is now open. HTTP parkerplace.shop. This is basically a centralized location if you're looking into having cool PnP swag. Well, somebody might not like that these are cool, somebody might like them that they're really cool, but the play location is now open. All profits of the store goes to charity. So anything what this is actually getting from, let's say, whatever you're paying, it all goes to charity. And it really embraces the sharing is caring mentality as well. And one of the things what we talked about with David on this one, David Warner, is that maybe sooner or later we'll have community designs and ideas what people can actually share with us, and we can actually put them in place to be sold in here and then get the profits again to the charity for other people to benefit. So I think it's a really great idea, and it's a great initiative helping other people in a different way, but again, in a powerful way as well. And it's good to see Parker logos and Parker pictures there as one of the options in the hoodies, and there's mugs and other things as well. But let's actually go to a quick round of a recap on what's happening within the open source project. So let's start with PnP CSOM Core, and I saw Bert on the call. Quick update on that one.
Yep, quick update, maybe slightly longer update today. Now, first, the near future April 2020 release coming up within 2 weeks, more or less. So what will be there? We have to ensure app catalog async extension method. That's a really cool method that ensures there's an app catalog. So if your tenant does not have an app catalog, we'll configure it for you. We'll get it up and running, and it will be there, and you will be ready to deploy your applications. So this was something that we missed when working with the provisioning service, because sometimes people don't have an app catalog, and then we have to ask them to create it up front, etc. So lots of hassle. Fixed now. Furthermore, Paulo and Urban worked on being able to create modern team sites using an app-only access token. So we could create a communication site using app-only, but not the team site, because the SharePoint API is not doing that. Now we actually create the group, of 365 group, and from there on, the SharePoint site creation will be triggered. So we have an app-only support there, and that's being built in SiteScore and in PowerShell as well. And there's there's several fixes done, but one fix that I want to kind of mention, when you use special characters in your passwords, then the OAuth credential flow was failing, which was kind of annoying, but that's fixed now, so that should all be good now. Now, the key thing for this one, for the core library I want to talk about today is our, let's say, H1 future. Where are we looking at?
Steps.
Next steps, big next steps. And maybe you might have, some folks might have thought like, yeah, it's pretty quiet over there. There's not so much happening as in the past, and there is a reason for that. The reason is because we are actually also in parallel working on some new projects, and one of them is what we call internally for now a graph-first library. So this will be a new .NET library focused on graph and REST SharePoint as well. Now, why are we doing this? For the folks that have been around for a while, the current PnP SideScore libraries, we started building that fast, I think, around 7 years ago, more or less.
Something like that.
The first pieces were written.
I'm so old.
Yeah, it's .NET code, sure, but if you look at .NET 5 is around the corner. This will be released this year. Our .NET code is quite outdated. There's also a ton of overhead, so we want to start from scratch, build a lightweight, new, modern library that uses graph or REST, but then delivers you with an object model. So you get a model from us where you can kind of navigate the data structures and apply actions on the data. But you as a developer don't have to worry anymore about how to actually make a call, because the library will decide whether there's a graph call or REST call. So now, where are we today with that? We are prototyping it. And we're aiming at getting an early preview out, publicly available for you guys to play around with and to test around end of the month. So 3 to 4 weeks still to go. But then we're actually opening up for you to play around, but also to provide feedback and to create PRs to help extend it, to help grow it.
And just really reiterate what we were saying. So, and the whole point again on this one is that the Graph API surface is all the time evolving, and we want to use Microsoft Graph because that is absolutely brilliant. There are, however, certain gaps here and there for SharePoint, especially because SharePoint has the legacy API surface. So whenever, if you use this library, it will take care of the mapping between is that capability available in Graph or not in Graph automatically. And then whenever it will be introduced in Graph, it will also start using the Graph side of the house behind of the scenes. So it is really there to help you to make your development as easy as possible.
You as a developer don't have to understand anymore whether there is a Graph API or not. You use a model.
Or CSOM or REST, yeah, exactly.
And we populate the model, and we ensure when you write something back that we write things back in the most optimal way. For example, it fully leverages batches, so everything is batched. So it's really a clever library that tries to be as performant as possible without you as developer having to really understand all the details. So now, that being said, that's the new thing. Now, currently we have PnP SideScore, we have PnP PowerShell, massively used products. Are we abandoning those? No, not at all. So there will be a major new release of both, a V4 release. Today we are at version 3. And in that V4 for SideScore and PowerShell, we want to stop shipping CSOM. Use CSOM for .NET Standard. So at that point, the library will run everywhere, almost everywhere, I would say. So that's one of the big things that we want to ship then. Plus, we'll do some cleanups and refactoring. We'll probably get rid of some very old stuff in there. So there will be some minor cleanup, but it's essentially stays the same, but then it will run using .NET Standard on any platform. And there will still be on-premises support. The new library will only be for online, but this one still will have on-prem. So we kind of keep working on both sides, and eventually, if the new library is getting feature-rich enough, it will start to replace some of the PnP SideScore, but we'll see how things play out in the future. We'll have time, and kind of so many things will evolve together.
Yeah. And immediately when it's, let's say, mature enough, it will be open source so that everybody can contribute in both sides.
Absolutely, yeah. As soon as possible, we'll open source and we'll really ask you to contribute and to provide feedback. Absolutely.
Yep. Cool. Let's actually go to the PnP PowerShell side then. Erwin, are you on the call?
Yep, I'm here.
Excellent.
Yep. Well, so something we mentioned last time already, but the repository has all moved, just like the majority of the other repositories. We moved to the new organization. Nothing will change there. We have quite some little small changes. In the next release, we will introduce a very interesting commandlet, I think, which will allow you to very easily set up an Azure AD application with a certificate for app-only access to SharePoint. It's a single commandlet that does all the work for you. So it generates the self-signed certificate. It creates the Azure AD app. It will register the certificate with the Azure AD app. It will add the certificates to your certificate store in Windows. Right. If you want so. Otherwise, you can also save the certificates to your file system. And it will set up the correct permission scopes, and it will ask you to consent to them, all in one commandlet. So that will be very easy for you to set up. And the cool thing of the commandlet is you effectively don't have to use it with PnP PowerShell, because it just creates a standard Azure AD app. So wherever you need an Azure AD app, you could use that single commandlet to define it. Very simple. As Bert already mentioned, modern team sites now with app-only access tokens will work as of the next release. That's quite cool. And if we're lucky, we will have a bunch of commandlets also released for teams. But that remains to be seen. I'm not promising that yet. That's why there's also no bullet here, but that is in the pipeline, and we're getting pretty close with that. So that's on the way too. So you will be able, for instance, to create a team and add a channel and add a tab or remove a tab. If you don't like the wiki tab, which many people don't like, you can remove it with a commandlet. So
that's pretty cool. Cool. Moving on the projects, a quick check on the modernization tooling.
Yeah, I can do this really quick this time.
Yep.
Upcoming April release, main thing is that we do a GA of the term mapping support, which we introduced in the March release. And a bug fix around handling of list columns. So when you want to have metadata on site pages, we have some cases where list columns were not fully supported in the mapping, which we'll fix for the April release. Then looking a bit more forward to the future, H1, maybe even H2, is we're looking into defining a model that you can provide input to page transformation from other sources. So today, page transformation reads classic pages, classic SharePoint pages, and creates a modern page. Great. Now, what if you have some legacy portal solution or a legacy wiki tool? There might be other types of sources that you want to kind of migrate into SharePoint. And that's what we are looking at defining, like what would be the model for that and implement that. And then for the scanner, 2.10 is out. Currently, no immediate plans to release 2.11, so nothing special over there. Cool.
And then we have the new recurrent visitor on this course as well. So Wictor, Yo Teams, quick update on what's happening at the Yo Teams side.
Yes, so last week we released the new preview version of the 2.13, which is the version which contains a couple of bug fixes, but most importantly, the single sign-on tabs, which we will have a demo of last in this hour as well. Quite a few new downloads, but also newly generated applications. I think it's all about 1,000 applications each month generated by the Yo Teams generator. So that's cool. We are also increasing the number of tests, both the sort of the unit test for the generator, but also full integration tests. So we verify that everything actually works and that the build actually works with different kind of scenarios. And there's quite a few new suggestions that we've been received, some of which are good first issues. So I'm looking forward to some more contributions. We had some new people chiming in on the issues list, with both with the feature requests, but also things that they want to fix, etc. So please go ahead, suggest new features, but also take advantage of being part of the community and contribute and pick up an item or two in there. Thanks.
Cool. Excellent. And then going to the demos, let's blame me for taking slightly extra time on the intros. But Chris Kent is having a surprise demo, which I have no idea either. Is it about horses and submarines? Are we finally getting that?
What? No idea. Share this thing. You guys let me know when you can see.
Awesome. All right. Take it away.
So, hey everybody, I'm Chris. Let's talk about some cool stuff you can do. All right. So if we go over to our classic Warrior Horses site here. All right. So our horses, they care about training. They care about the proper use of equipment, of course, as we all do. And so they've tried to make all the manuals that they get for their equipment available. All right. So they've created this manuals document library. And it's all right, It's got the document here, which you can see, how to read it. They've even provided a few little details. And then we've got these other pieces here, which I'm going to get back to, which are some resources they want you to kind of take a look at when you're looking at these things. And this is okay, but it becomes a lot more powerful when we start using something like this with the document library web part on a modern page. Now, we did something similar to what I'm going to show back in Thanksgiving, so November 28th of this past year, 2019. We've got a whole video on that, on how to do this with the list. We're going to take it a little further today and show you how to do it with the document library. So I'll reference that video a little later if you guys want to follow along for there. But for now, let's go ahead and create a new page. Well, we'll go back home to do that. So right here, we're going to create a new page where we're going to hold all of our exciting manuals and give this a little more context, right? So let's create a page. We're going to call this thing equipment. That sounds exciting. All right, if we edit that, we'll add a little tools. Destruction. All right, we're going to make this a little bit fancy here. There we go. Okay, that sounds good. And then let's change that image back there. All right, let's add an image. Let's do any cool recent ones. Now we'll do a search real quick. So we'll say horse equipment. That sounds good. What could be bad with that? Always good to do live Bing searches. There's one, right? So we'll grab this, some nice horse equipment background. These are all Creative Commons. All right, we'll change that focus. Beautiful stuff here. So now we've got a nice thing here. We'll move my name. But now let's start working with this page, right? So the first thing we want to do is we're going to kill that guy. And let's make this into 2 columns. And we're going to add a nice document library web part here. So we'll just type that in, document library. And we're going to grab our manuals list. And now that lovely same thing we saw before shows up here, so that's great. I'm going to hide that command bar because that's annoying to me. Apply, and we'll get rid of that. Now, one of the things we showed you is the way you can connect these to other web parts and create kind of miniature applications here. So in this case, we're going to take advantage of one called the list properties. And we're going to hit the connect button over here. There's these 3 little dots. When I click that, I'm going to connect the source. In this case, I'm going to pick manuals. All right, and now I can start to see other stuff here. Now, I've noticed a little bit of delay in how that's showing up, but if we pick one, say, laser eyeballs, there was all our details, right? Well, maybe we don't want to show everything. All right, so we're going to go back in here, and we're going to say, you know what, for this one, let's just show the details. All right, we also notice there's something here, though, like the title coming from the actual document is a little more descriptive. We'd want that instead. So let's come back and take a look at what we can do to make that even easier. So let's go ahead and save that. Again, the list properties takes a little bit to update sometimes. What's it's showing? There's just details. All right, we can add another web part here. All right, where's my little web part selector? There it is. And this one, we're going to do the file viewer. All right, we're going to build something here, and then we're going to format it. So for the file viewer, we're not going to actually pick a document, right? You could pick a standard document if you want on that page, or even better, you can do that same kind of connection here. So we're going to connect the source. Again, we're going to pick manuals. And so the idea is whenever we select something over here in our document library, we're going to actually show that file directly on the page. We're going to provide the details about it. So that's pretty cool, right? So that's all right. But now we can go even further and add something else here. So let's add ourselves a new section. All right, so we already got a section here. We'll add another couple column section. And just for distinction, we're going to give it a nice section background. Ooh, so pretty. In this case, we're going to add an embed. All right. Now, with embeds, we've shown this before. You can actually, so if you're going to want embed from YouTube or something, you could set this up and you could put special kind of characters in here, right, in this embed box. And that's pretty awesome. In this case, we're going to do that as well. But instead of just a portion of the piece, we're going to grab our source manuals. And you'll notice here in the list, we go back to our list, we have these embed 1 and embed 2. And we've got just the full-on iframe code. All right, which all we did was we went to like YouTube, we said share, and we grabbed that embed code, and we just pasted it right in there. So in this case, we can reference that the same way we reference columns in our view when we're trying to do view or list formatting with this square bracket, $, and then the name of our internal column, right? So in this case, we're going to say embed 1. We'll leave that, and it's going to go ahead and grab that YouTube video that we've got there. All right, we can have another one here. We can grab another embed. In this case, again, we're going to connect it to manuals. We're doing quite a few connections here. It's very exciting. We're going to do $, embed too. You'll notice that I started to get prompted for some of those if you're not familiar with your internal names, but that works. So now I've got another link. This one actually happens to be from Vimeo because we've got that full iframe in there. We can have all sorts of different sources here. So that's cool, right? So now if we publish this guy, we'll take a look at it. We've got a little miniature application. It's all right, right? We can come in here. We can choose like laser eyeballs, right? And we're going to get that nice PowerPoint view here in just a minute. We'll come down here. We actually have a sway that's embedded, right? We've got a power app that's embedded. That's cool. We come down here, you know, reptile tanks, something similar, right? See the Word document. We can read it here on the page. We can actually take a form, right, and embed that here. And then we've got something from a TED Talk, right? So we're providing a lot more context. This is pretty neat. If someone actually wants to edit that, you know, that document, they can. And that actually brings us to another kind of issue here. We've got this really nice page, but then we have this incredibly ugly looking web part, right? It's an Excel spreadsheet here with all this extra information because we need this information as part of our view in order to have that as for these connections, right? But what if we wanted to, you know, clean that up a little bit? Well, we're gonna, so that's exciting. The other thing is people oftentimes, instead of hitting this little selection button, they're gonna sit here and they're gonna click that and it's gonna open up in Word and they're gonna lose all that context and everything we're trying to get them to do, which is use this thing as a kind of connected contextual page. So horses are pretty smart. So they come back to their list and they remember we can do all that formatting stuff. So we're going to format our current view. And I'm going to start with something that was very similar to a sample that already exists and hit advanced mode so I can edit the JSON directly. We have this generic video button sample, which is what I talked about where we made kind of a quick video browser for YouTube. And again, that is a video we did previously. You can check that out. But I'm going to start with that sample code. I'm going to go ahead and copy that, where I've only edited one little thing, which is where I've set that text content instead of title, I've set it to file leaf ref, right? So that's how we reference this file name, which is okay. But you'll see, you know, I got these manuals directly from the site, and it's got this horrible name, right? And it's got the version, it's got a date, and nobody really wants to select from that, right? And we've got a little icon, and that's okay. That's not quite what we want to do. So let's change this up a little bit. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to get rid of that icon. So let's see if I can zoom this a little bit, make that a little easier to see. Okay, woo, there we go. So instead of a span with the icon, we're going to make this an image. All right, instead of an icon name, now we're going to have a source, right? We're going to provide that. Now we've got this nice little @thumbnail we can hear, and we can say our size. We're going to say small. And when I do that, you'll notice now I'm getting that that gets rendered automatically for me. That's pretty, right? And if I wanted to control, you see I've got a little bit of the sizing here. We're going to skip that for now, but if you wanted to kind of constrain all that, you've got all that power to do that as well, to make all that line up. For this, though, file leaf ref's okay, but as we mentioned, some of these documents, right, we actually set the title property in Office, and that transferred over to our SharePoint list. We'd like to reference that, right? So you would think we could just say title. Preview that, and you cannot. So unlike list, you can't reference title at all times when doing formatting. In document libraries, they actually have to be part of the view. So let's go ahead and let's copy that so I don't lose it. I'm going to cancel for now, just so we can get back our kind of our standard interface here. One of the strange things is if I go into my show hide columns, you'll see title is not an option for me here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to our old school. I'm going to edit the current view. And we'll give this a second, and I come down here, and now I can check title. All right, so I can add that to the view. That's all I need to change. I'm going to hit OK. Now titles are part of the view, so now I can reference it in my format. So if I go back in, I'm going to go to Documents, Format Current View. Again, I'm going to hit Advanced so I can do that JSON. I'm going to paste what we've done before. I'm going to preview that now. Now I can see I've got title. But now I've got a problem. Not every document has a title. All right, so now we're going to write just a really quick if statement. So let's take this and get rid of that guy. Well, actually, we'll leave it in here. We're going to say equals. We're going to say if the length, and remember, this isn't the actual length of the title. It's going to be 1 if it has any content, and it's going to be 0 if it's blank. In this case, so I'm going to say if length title, then let's use the title. All right, but if not, let's use that file leaf ref. All right, so at least we can see something. Close our parenthesis here. Preview that, and that's okay, right? That's significantly better, but now we've still got this .docx, like that's important to anyone. that's trying to browse our little portal here. So we're going to do a quick substring on this, on our file leaf ref. What a substring does, right, it gets just the characters starting at 0. So we're going to start at the very beginning, and we want to go up to. And in this case, we actually want to find that period, right? So we're going to say index of, and now we're going to actually look inside, again, the file leaf ref. And when I look inside it, I'm going to be looking for a period. That's all I'm going to do there. And if I preview that, that's just going to strip that off. Now we've got ourselves a nice little navigational piece. So I'm going to save that. And now we go back to our exciting new page here, equipment. All right, so which I've now zoomed in quite a bit. Let's zoom back out. Okay, and let's refresh this. And we should see it because we applied that to our default view. Now we've got ourselves a much easier way to view this, right? So now when we go here, we can click our strapless grenade launchers. All right, we can read the document right here. We can let them even open it if they still want to, and they want to read it full screen, but they have all the context with the specific videos or other embeds we wanted them to have. We've got additional details we're providing through the list properties that we don't want to always show because we've got a lot of documents here. We want to show when they click on it. Right, so now you can start to see there's real power here. I've created a single page, but by using a list and throwing some formatting on there so it doesn't look like an Excel sheet, I've now created a miniature application in just a few minutes. And I can go a lot further with this depending on what I want to do, right? I can create this. One nice thing I've often done is, because the document library web part, you can specify specific folders. You can create whole pages that are dedicated to the same document library but have different folders that are using the same view. You can have multiple views here. Really, really cool stuff. Okay. All right. So take advantage of that. Let's go back and review real quick. So the whole idea is there are several web parts that support these connections, including the list properties we looked at, file viewer, embed. There are more coming. But there's also full support when you make your own using SharePoint Framework. We've got several examples of that in our web ports sample library, where you can see how dynamic data is used in there. So if you want to embed and grab some of those same types of properties and provide your own custom displays to create these kind of applications, or let your users, right, you deploy small pieces here and let them build complex applications using a combination of first-party web parts and your web parts. You can do all that, and you can drive all that using some nice formats on either your list or your library web parts. All right, so that's about it. Check out the full documentation. If you check out this, if you go here, that's going to go to that video where we've done a video portal using the same kind of concepts using a list. And then, of course, we've got a couple of samples here, the generic video button and the document navigator, which is the one I just put together here today. All right, that's what I got. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Chris, for that one. I think, Wictor, jump on your screen.
Let's see. Let's start sharing my screen. Thanks, Vesa and Chris, as usual, for an amazing demo.
No.
So I'm not going to have any warrior horses in this one. It's going to be plain old tabs, TypeScript, and some Azure AD stuff. Mostly Azure AD, actually. That's where we spend most of our time. So what we want to do today is sort of use the new feature, which is in preview. So what we want to do is create a tab which uses the single sign-on features in Microsoft Teams. It's always been sort of a problem, or not a problem, but you had to do quite a lot of work to get single sign-on to work, to actually verify that the user is signed in when you're creating a Teams tab. If you're using SharePoint Framework, you get all of that for free, but assuming you're building an external application, you're converting one of your existing web applications, for instance, into a Teams tab, or you want to do the provider hosted way of building applications, both for SharePoint and Teams, you need to set up single sign-on for tabs. And that's a new feature that's available in Developer Preview right now. And it requires you to do some configuration in Azure AD and create an application. Then we use the Yo Teams generator to scaffold out the project, and then that will show you all the code that is required for you. But we've also discussed some of the issues that might rise once you've done this and want to do more with it, essentially, which are some of it are limitations right now, some of it are limitations in Azure AD and the service itself. But let's get started. So I have a Teams tenant here with Teams, and I created a team, and we want to create a simple tab here where we can verify that we're actually signed in. So that we're going to do all that. But to do that, the first thing we need to do, we need to host this application somewhere. And as you know, the Teams tab is sort of an iframe to somewhere else. And to do this, I actually prepared, I'm using ngrok, so I can host it locally here. We need a public addressable URL, so I'm using ngrok, and I set up a reserved name here for this demo called tabdemo.ngrok.io. So this is the URL I need to have. And there's a couple of, this is super important that you decide this beforehand. Of course, you can change it later, but it will affect some of the decisions that you do. The second thing, you cannot use Azure websites. I'll say that already here. I'll come back to that, why it's so later. So don't use anything myapplication.azurewebsites.net. You need something else. But we'll come back to that one. The next step you do is you go to aad.portal.azure.com. So you log into your Azure AD and you go to client app registrations and create a new application. Let's see, and let's create a new one. So I click on new registration. PnP tab SSO demo. Then I choose that I want to use this for any organizational directory, sort of a multi-tenant solution. Then I don't have to do anything more on this. So I don't have to specify the redirect URI here. Click register. That will create my application. And then there's a couple of other things we need to do with this one, which you typically what you've done is you used API permissions and granted permissions to this one. We'll do that as well. But the first thing we need to do is that we need to expose an API here. Of course, I need to save the application ID. So let's actually do that. So we have it. Let's open up a notepad and save it for later. Notepad. Let's move that window over here and save it like that. I want my app ID. We'll need this one in a second. Like that. Then we go to the expose an API as mentioned, and what we need to do here is the first thing is to define an application ID URI. And that's the small thing you see up here. I click on set. What will happen is, of course, Azure AD is great. We'll suggest a name for us, and under normal circumstances, this will work perfectly fine. We can tweak it and have something else here. But when it comes to Teams SSO tabs, we need to do something differently. In between here, so let's zoom in here, in between API : / in between here, we need to add our DNS or the URL of our site. So what I'll do is I'll add tabdemo.ngrok.io / Let's zoom in again and take a look at that. So what I did here, I let the API / be as is. I let the GUID here, which is my app ID, be as is. But what I did is I actually add my URL in here and a /. And this is super important because Teams will actually use this at runtime to verify that the application ID URI for the application you're using and the tab you want to show, that those URLs are the same for security reasons. So I'll take this one, click save, and go back here and paste it in here just so we have it for later. So that's the second step you need to do after registering your app. So a couple of other things, as I mentioned, you can't use AzureWebsites.net here for security reasons, and that is sort of an Azure AD thing right now. They consider AzureWebsites.net insecure. ngrok.io is not considered insecure in this case. You are not allowed to use multiple application ID URIs here. Which might be an issue if you have a test dev staging environment, which means that you need to set up multiple applications and you need to handle that in your build pipeline or whatever when you actually scaffolding out your applications later. But that is sort of an extra addition. You can do some Friday night and exercise on that. Next step we need to do here is to add a scope. I need to create a custom scope for the API I'm exposing here. And it has to be called access as user, so access _ user. Then I need to choose that consent here. Both admin and user should be able to consent this, and I need to write some consent stuff here for admin. Just type this lorem ipsum. This is, of course, you should have pretty descriptions in here, so the admin and the user consent screens looks good. And why do they need to consent this? And of course, it has to be enabled. Then we click add scope. So that means we have added the scope here. As you can see, it's enabled for that app ID URI. And if we scroll all the way here, you can see we have the app ID URI / our scope name, access underscore as underscore user. The next thing I need to do is that I need to authorize 2 client applications. And the two client applications is the Teams desktop and mobile application and the Teams web application. There are actually two different Azure AD applications. So, and I have the GUIDs somewhere here. Let's see. These are of course in official documentation, but the first one is this one that you could, if you quick, you can remember that one until you do this. But yeah, it's in the documentation. It will be in this recording. So that's what you have in here. And I will need to connect that to my scope that I just created. So I do add application. And yes, there's no good sort of lookup, so you know what client this is. You essentially need to look into the documentation at docs Microsoft.com for those two. And then we add the other one, which is another GUID here, and this one. And I connect it to that scope as well and click add application. So that was sort of the third step I need to do. First, we created application, we generated app ID URI, we generated the scope, we added the authorized client applications, and now the final step we need to do is grant some permissions. And this sounds like, if you're very familiar with what you sort of do with when you're creating a normal Azure AD application and whatnot, is you go in here and assign sort of mail.read and those kind of things. Unfortunately, you cannot do that with Teams tabs in SSO. The only thing you can add and must add is that you go click add permission, click Microsoft Graph and delegated permissions, and you add email, offline access, OpenID, and profile. Those 4, including the user.read, is all that you actually can have in the tab. There's a couple of other reasons. We'll show that in the demo later and come back to that, how we can get access to the other stuff. But the whole idea with the tabs SSO is actually verifying that the user is signed in, not granting access token to other resources. But this was required for the whole process to work. And of course, you can grant consent and everything in here. So I'll grant consent directly to my whole tenant, so we don't have to worry about those kind of things. Now my application is set up, and I should jump over to my Teams generator. And what I have is I have the latest preview of the Yeoman Teams generator. So I type Yo Teams. I have pre-canned this, and so we don't have to wait for the npm packages. So I skip the, I need to create the directory first, sorry. Demo, like that, perfect. Then Yo Teams, I do skip install, so we don't have to look at the npm packages installing, and let that start. And what will happen now is we go through the wizard. We looked at it in a call a couple of weeks ago as well. But when we will choose yes, when we will being asked about the tab and using the SSO. So this takes another few minutes. It's slow to start here late in the afternoon. Been working too hard today. And also, we'll make sure to share the URL to the documentation where you find those GUIDs for the web client and the mobile client. Yes, yeah. So here you see I'm using 2.13.0 preview 2. I just will follow the wizard here. I will not do anything special. Use the current folder, title of my project, name, version. This doesn't really matter. It has to be 1.5 and above, of course. But I mentioned sort of that this is in developer preview, but that has nothing to do with the manifest version, rather than that it has to be 1.5 or dev preview. Choose that one, skip that one. And the only thing we're going to add here is to add a tab. I can just click enter. And here is where I need to type my URL that we created the first. So tabdemo.ngrok.io. Skip testing frameworks, we skip app insights, demo tab, call it like that. A configurable one should be available both in Teams channels and the group chats. Then we have the magic kind of thing here, which says, do you require Azure AD single sign-on support for the tab? And we choose yes here. And then we actually getting asked for the two values that we created in the Azure AD portal. The first one being the application ID. So we paste that one like that. And the second one is application ID URI. And as you can see, since we already inserted the URL up here and we inserted the app ID, we assume and we know that this is going to be the URL, the app ID URI you have to do. So you just need to click enter here unless you type something or skipped it previously. We skip the SharePoint Online integration here and click enter. And this will actually create all the files that you need for this. And as I said, in order to save some time, I already created the project. So let's go into tab SSO demo, open up Visual Studio Code. And meanwhile, that is loading. And we'll take a look at that one in a second. And let's start the application in the background, which means I will use Gulp. No, I can't do that yet. I need to do one thing since we created a new application just here. So what we have in the Geomon generated project, and let me zoom in here a bit as well, is that all these kind of parameters you entered, we put them in the .env file here. So I need to copy them from the other project into this pre-canned demo here. And the only pre-canned with this demo is essentially that we already executed npm installs. We don't have to wait for those packages. I haven't changed a single line of code in here, but now we have the one we created together. Perfect. Let's start the server. This is actually, as I said, it's a web application hosted on using ngrok, or hosted on my local machine and exposed publicly through ngrok. So do ngrok/serve. We can skip linting here, so we save some time in compiling. And let's see if that works. And then we go take a look at the code and what's actually make all this magic happen. It was taking a second or two. As I said, yeah, there we are, ngrok serve. Starting ngrok in the background, we'll compile and generate the manifest and all of that. So, as you see, we have these kind of, we have the ID here, the app ID URI as well. Under source, we have the manifest, which is the JSON file that defines your application. And what happens when we add this SSO tab? It's a normal configurable tab with the config file here, but at the bottom of this page, we will actually get something called web application info. And this will have a reference to your ID and the application ID URI. And that will, during runtime or compile time, actually replace with those variables we had in there. But this is sort of the magic thing that will make the single sign-on work. In our application, we have a client-side script for the tab built in React. And this is just the default scaffolding. I haven't done anything about it. But what it will do, once it's initialized, it will get the context. And finally, we'll use a method called getAuthToken of the team's JavaScript SDK. And that's nothing you need to pass in here or configure in here, essentially more than 3 parameters. So the first one is a success callback. What will happen when we get the token? The second one is a failure callback, and that is if an error happens, and then you need to pass resources. And this is actually not documented. If you run it in JavaScript, you don't need this, but if you do it using TypeScript, that is actually a part of the types. You need to have something in there. You can essentially put whatever you want in here, but my guess right now, haven't get it verified yet, is that you need to use the app ID URI that you have. Hopefully that's how it's supposed to work. But as I said, there's no documentation or anything about this so far, but this works, so that's a good thing. And what I do here, if we get a successful token, is I'm doing a simple jot the code of this one and get the username. So let's see if our application has started. Yes, it's up and running. Let's go to Microsoft Teams and add the tab and see if it works. So what I do here, if I want to add a new application, I click on Manage Team, choose Apps, and in the lower right corner, I do is side loading. Of course, I can upload it to my tenant, but I prefer to do it this way. And then we should actually we already have it in here. Can just remove it so you show everything from the start. So I tested this one before. Upload a custom app. Come on, let's go to C, code, demos, PnP. There we are. Under package, we will have tab SSO demo.zip. And as you can see here, it contains a tab. I can click add, and it will be uploaded to Teams, or the manifest will be uploaded. And we can go back to our channel and try to add this application. We click on plus here, and we will have tab SSO demo, which is my tab. As I said, this is all generated by default by the generator, so there's no code changes or anything. The only thing we did here was sort of fix that those two IDs, and we can have just a dummy value in the configuration. The tab will be configured, added in here, and hopefully you can see here, so it says hello undefined, but now it says hello Wictor. So it's actually a little bit the delay the first time you do this, and the code, yeah, we have right now it says undefined there, but you can add whatever you want in there. So if I do a reload, it's much faster, it's cached, etc. The thing I want to show you is sort of if we do, let's see if we can get in here and add a breakpoint. Hopefully the developer tools are loading. I want to show you the jaw token here for some of you who wants to access the graph, and this is where it doesn't really work as you expect. So I have a breakpoint in here. Let's zoom in a bit. Essentially in that code, in the success callback method. So if we reload the page or the tab, and now it didn't stick just for that. Yeah, there it is. So if we get out this, take this token here and copy this one, and then open that up in jot.ms. See if we can get it there. I just got a part of it, sorry about that. Let's try to get the full one. This is how it is when it's zoomed in. There it is. What I want to show you with this jaw token is that it doesn't really look like the normal ones you have. Or it's a normal jaw token, but not the one you expect when you get from the graph. So what's happened here is that the audience is my application ID, of course, but I don't have any scope more than the one I requested, or the one I created. So I can't use this one to get information from the Microsoft Graph right now. But the guidance from the Teams team on how to do this is essentially use the on behalf of flow. So what you need to do is essentially send this token back to the server side. Then using the server side implementation and on behalf, the on behalf flow, get a new access token, which can access the graph, and then send that back to the client, and then the client can use that to go to the graph. Yes, it's not optimal, but that's the way it works. The thing you need to do, implement your own pre-consent or the consent dialog and those kind of things in that scenario as well. But that's sort of the big caveat right now. The only thing you can essentially do with this tab SSO is verify that the user is actually signed in, and you can get the username, the preferred username, and essentially the tenant ID and those kind of things. So this is the data you can work with. So hopefully we can get back in the future talking about how you do that server side on behalf of flow to actually get to the graph permissions. Or we're actually considering adding that to the part of the generator as well, so it scaffolds out all that code for you, because that is unfortunately a little bit of work for you to do. Thanks. I almost used up all the time there. Yep,
really well used time. So let me share my screen, and we're going to close up as well. So thank you, Wictor, on that one. Really useful demo for understanding how things work. And that was an Azure AD authenticated process, and everything got sorted out. There was one question related on that, but I think the question came just before you showed what you were doing. So if you see that in the chat. But that was all we're going to cover today. So that was Chris Kent and Wictor. Thank you for the awesome demos. The recording will be out in the YouTube channel within 24 hours, and the demos slightly later than next week as an individual videos as well, so you can easily find them in the future on. Unfortunately, no time for Q&A today. Next Microsoft 365 Developer Special Interest Group meeting is in April 16th, and then the next SharePoint Framework Special Interest Group meeting is a week from now on Thursday at 9th of April. But that's all what we're going to do today. So learn, reuse, share. We're going to update some of the URLs and landing pages pretty soon on addressing the name changes. But that's it for now. Have a great Thursday. Stay safe, and hopefully we'll see you next week as well. Thank you. Bye-bye.